President Isaias Afwerki is in Saudi Arabia right now on a 4-day working visit to meet with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. And this is not just another diplomatic stop. When you connect this visit with his most recent trips to Sudan and Egypt, a much bigger story emerges. I believe we are witnessing the formation of a new Red Sea Bloc, a strategic alignment between Eritrea, Sudan, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia. And this bloc will reshape the balance of power in the Horn of Africa. What do I mean by that? I will explain. Welcome to the program. Let's begin with the facts. The visit to Saudi Arabia was announced as a full working visit, not just a symbolic one. It includes Eritrea's foreign minister and other senior officials, which tells us this is a serious agenda. Just days before, President Isaias was in Port Sudan and welcomed by a large crowd and had extensive talks with General al-Burhan and some Sudanese ministers. And in October, he met President Sisi in Cairo. These are not isolated trips. They form a coherent pattern of alignment. And the emergent alignment or the emergent thesis is very clear that Eritrea, Sudan, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia are coordinating to secure the Red Sea, to counter it from any destabilizing pressures from any part of the region, including Ethiopia's most recent disruptive posture. And now let's take a look at the why. The reason behind why these countries might think they need to form some kind of strategic bloc. And of course, it's all about the Red Sea region, and the Red Sea region is quite vast and it affects each country in its own way. And there are several reasons for the need of this. But I believe on top of that list is Ethiopia's rhetoric that, intended or not, might cause more instability. Abiy Ahmed's rhetoric over the last couple of years, and which actually really gotten worse over the last few months, when he talks about Ethiopia's natural right to sea access, it has shaken the region, not only the Horn of Africa countries, but even beyond. And whether he intended it or not, maybe he didn't think about it deep enough, but it has actually created a sense of urgency among several countries. And each one has its own reason. And in this case, for Eritrea, Egypt, Sudan, and Saudi Arabia, this rhetoric and the consequences that could come from that, or has come from that, has created some kind of a fundamental security reasons for each country separately and for all of them together as a bloc to say we need to create coalition. Now, this is not all about Ethiopia. Ethiopia might be a very small factor of this, but it definitely created its one of the factors. Now, when we take a look at each country separately, it probably makes more sense. Now, let's begin with Eritrea. Eritrea obviously wants to prevent the next war, any military miscalculation that might come from Ethiopia. So it makes sense for Eritrea to create alignments. And it's not all about Ethiopia. The alignment has something to do with the larger Red Sea region, but it definitely makes sense for it to prioritize its security of its ports, security of its sovereignty, and that may be related to Ethiopia. And then, but the bigger picture is its coastline. When we talk about the Red Sea, Eritrea is on the Red Sea. So we are talking about the stability of its coastline. Moving on to Sudan. Sudan, led by General al-Burhan, is fighting for its natural survival. And it definitely makes sense for it to create reliable regional neighbors. And no one is closer to it than its immediate neighbors, Egypt and Eritrea, and across the sea, Saudi Arabia. So it definitely totally makes sense for Sudan. And as far as the Red Sea is concerned, it wants to regain control over its own coast, and stabilize Port Sudan. So it definitely totally makes sense for Sudan to be part of this. And let's take a look at Egypt. Egypt could have many reasons as far as the Red Sea security is concerned. Definitely a country that manages the Suez Canal. The Red Sea, stability of the Red Sea is hugely important to Egypt. Not to mention, Egypt is managing a long-term tension with Ethiopia, something to do with the Nile, something to do with the GERD. It's not about whether the GERD, the dam, should be built or not. It's already built. From here on, it's all about water levels that are uh, going to Egypt from the Nile. And so far, it does not have a long-term agreement with Ethiopia on what to do when during drought years and how water will be allocated. It does not have assurance of what it will be for the future. So definitely, it makes sense for Egypt. It benefits when the Red Sea is stable, and it also probably gives it a lot of leverage to negotiate with Ethiopia, because so far Ethiopia has not been negotiating responsibly. Let's moving on to Saudi Arabia. And for Saudi Arabia, needless to say, the stability of the Red Sea is hugely important. Uh, it's definitely the economic artery of the world, but at the same time, for Egypt's, at the same time, for Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030, it's hugely important. As we all know, Saudi Arabia has this mega projects all over the Red Sea, including the one for NEOM city and the Red Sea project and all these luxury tourism zones that they have planned for the next few years. And it's all about the Vision 2030. 2030 is the year 2030 is around the corner. And the whole thing depends on a safe Red Sea. To them, their western coastline, which is the Red Sea, a lot of things are riding on that. So the last thing they want is another disruptive war. It's not, again, it's not all about Ethiopia, Eritrea, but for example, if there is a war between Eritrea and Ethiopia, it definitely will destabilize the region, and it will affect the Red Sea, and it will affect all their projects. So it definitely makes sense for them to be a key player in this. So when we put all that together, there is definitely a strategic logic here. When the interest of each country overlaps, it definitely gives it this natural alignment. A natural alignment forms. This natural alignment is not about aggression. I don't think they are coming together to form some kind of military coalition or coalition against any particular country, but it's all about stability. Actually, it's all about preventing instability. And that is the foundation of this new Red Sea Bloc. And then there is the US angle and its burden sharing doctrine. A few days ago, the United States released its national security strategy. It shifted American foreign policy from aid driven to interest driven with a concept called burden sharing. This means that the US wants regional powers, especially rich, wealthy ones like Saudi Arabia, to take a leading role to secure their own neighborhood, their own, the maritime routes like the Red Sea. So when Eritrea, Sudan, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia are aligning together to stabilize the Red Sea, the region, the U.S. would not mind that. As a matter of fact, it would prefer that, as they clearly stated in their national security strategy. This means this new Red Sea Bloc will be able to grow without too much interference from the US or any other regional powers. And now let's take a look at the Sudan connection. From these countries that are forming a bloc, Sudan is actually the one that is in war. Its civil war has been going on for many years. And thankfully, President Trump is promised to work with Crown Prince MBS to bring an end to this. So as part of their end game, this bloc, working with Eritrea and Egypt as part of their larger picture to bring an end to the Sudanese war, definitely makes sense. So Sudan is crucial part of this. Port Sudan is, and Sudan sits right at the heart of the Red Sea. And President Isaias Afwerki, when he recently visited Port Sudan, he was warmly welcomed by the public, and that's a kind of it's a signal of what's been going on since the beginning of the war as far as Eritrea and Sudan is concerned. Eritrea has been welcoming Sudanese refugees, not as refugees, as guests as well. A very admirable and amicable way of doing things. And now Eritrea is a key factor to bringing an end to the Sudanese war. At the end of the day, both Eritrea and Saudi Arabia favor stabilizing the central government, General Burhan's government, under a centralized authority in Khartoum. Because at the end of the day, a chaotic Sudan is dangerous for everyone, for the neighborhood, from everybody's perspective. If we take a look at from the security of Sudan or the war in Sudan as part of from Saudi Arabia's perspective, it definitely affects their Vision 2030 and especially the projects, the NEOM city, and which sits across the water, across the sea from Sudan. So so does a lot of their Red Sea projects, their tourism projects, their futuristic projects that depend on the peace and stability in that region. So definitely Saudi Arabia cannot allow to have instability on the opposite of the shore while they're trying to sell attraction and tourism towards Saudi Arabia on their side of the shore. So when it comes to Eritrea, this big picture is now a very indispensable, quiet, but very important role player in this whole thing. It has stability internally, so it has this stabilizing anchor, and everybody can work with Eritrea, especially Egypt and Sudan itself, and Saudi Arabia, and other, including the United States and other powers as well. And of course, it has its own strategic interest on its shore as part of the Red Sea and as being a neighbor to Sudan. So part of the Sudan angle definitely goes through Eritrea. And when we bring all together this coordinated end game that hopefully that it will bring peace to Sudan, but as part of this bloc's strategy, it actually makes sense for them to work together and make Sudan a priority. At the end of the day, stabilize Sudan, secure the Red Sea, protect the Red Sea corridor for international trade, and hopefully this will also pay dividends in terms of an economic transformation for Eritrea ports, Massawa and Assab, investment coming from Saudi Arabia and other countries, and the same thing for Port Sudan. If we take a look at Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030, it's not only about building futuristic cities on their side of the shore. It's actually about diversifying their economy. And part of their diversification of their economy includes creating efficient, integrated economic zones on the Red Sea. So, in that regard, ports matter. So, it makes sense for them to invest in infrastructures of ports. And lately, we've been hearing rumors about possibly they might invest billions in rehabilitating the port of Assab. And so while there are no confirmed reports about such investments, it definitely makes logical sense. They've been competing for such kind of influence with the UAE. And if we have to use our logic, ports definitely matter because as far as Saudi Arabia is concerned, they serve three goals for them. For logistics and trade flows for NEOM city and the Red Sea projects, you have to have ports to be able to move goods and resources and materials. So the more choices they have, the better. The other part is the strategic redundancy, because when you have multiple access points, in case there is a disruption on one of them, you have other choices. So definitely makes sense for them to make sure that they have more than one or two choices. Then, overall, the long term economic integration of the Red Sea zone, if they can achieve that, it would make their larger vision of what they have for their country and for the region make sense. So again, while there are no port investments that we can say are definitely done, or that they will be publicly announced soon, but definitely we hope so, the logic behind such economic vision definitely makes sense for Saudi Arabia, and fingers crossed, hopefully it will involve Eritrea ports. As we wrap up, let's talk about winners and losers. In geopolitics, when there is a strategic alignment and realignment, there are winners and losers. Hopefully, when you have the good alignment, you only have win-win situation. But let's take a look at each country. Saudi Arabia, from such alignment, it gains secure Red Sea and stable countries across the sea, a stable environment for its Vision 2030. So definitely, it's a win for Saudi Arabia. For Eritrea, Eritrea gains definitely alliance, and it gains protection. It increases its diplomatic weight. For a small country to have actually such weight is actually wonderful, and it gains economic partnerships, hopefully in the near future. For Sudan, peace is priority, so it gains allies from its neighbors, Egypt and Eritrea immediately, and then Saudi Arabia. Now the involvement of the United States and the international community. Being member of such a bloc, it definitely makes it a winner. So it's a win for Egypt as well. So Egypt gains leverage and regional backing for its long-term interest. It maintains stability on the Red Sea, becomes a key player in peace for Sudan. Being friends with Eritrea means being a crucial player in the Horn of Africa region. So a big win for Egypt as well. Now, that who is left? Ethiopia. Because of what Abiy Ahmed has been doing for the last couple of years and for the last few months, uh, it makes Ethiopia a loser. Because by maneuvering what he did, he kind of painted Ethiopia into a corner, painted himself into a corner actually, and made Ethiopia an isolated nation as far as the larger Red Sea project is concerned. First of all, it's not a Red Sea country. He was trying to push his way by undermining Eritrea's sovereignty, so it didn't work. So by definition, his plan did not work. It made him a loser, and it's not a win for Ethiopia. But this is not. It doesn't mean Ethiopia, if it engages respectfully, if it respects Eritrean sovereignty, um, this is not definitely the end game for Ethiopia. But whatever strategy Abiy Ahmed was following was made him a loser, and that was a strategy that lost. At the end of the day, no country benefits from conflict. It has to cooperate. It has to respect the international order, which Ethiopia was attempting to undermine for some crazy reason. So definitely on this list, Ethiopia does not win; it loses. But if it adjusts its strategy, it could definitely be a win-win situation, because no country benefits from a conflict. The new Red Sea Bloc, Eritrea, Sudan, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia, is forming, but it's not a military alliance. It's actually a pragmatic alignment of interests driven by economic security and regional stability. And President Isaias Afwerki's visit to Saudi Arabia is one of the strongest signs that the region is entering into a new diplomatic phase. That's all I have for today. Thank you for watching. The best way to support this channel is by engaging with the content, by liking, sharing, subscribing, and commenting. And I do read all your comments, and they shape what I will be talking about next. If you like to see more fact-based analysis like this, I encourage you to hit subscribe today. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.